meetings on Zoom before.
I would love to be the voiceover of the Zoom. Like this meeting is being recorded. Just get a side hustle check just doing that. It's like the guy from the movies back in the day before he passed away. In a world, and just talk about whatever the movie's coming up.
Oh my God.
So Jay, welcome back to the podcast, man. This part 2,
Oh my God. Thank you.
the
Thank you
remix,
so much.
the remix.
I've missed it here. I think you were my I think you were like my first podcast actually. So this is like cool to be back. I love it.
Yeah. It's the beauty of pandemic to connect in so many different ways, whether it be IG lives and Zoom and all this stuff. So it's
Hmm.
like
It's absolutely insane. I love it. I've honestly, it's so weird. I mean, I love the pandemic, but I love the ability to be able to connect with so many people. And I feel like the last year and a half, I mean, we've just found so many creative ways to do that we otherwise wouldn't have even thought of. So I think in some aspects, it's really, I think the pandemic in some ways unofficially kind of taught us a bunch of skills that we didn't even know we wanted or desired or had in us, you know?
right, of course. So even just like I see, you're leading the forefront of like having our social work skills transfer into business, which we'll get into that, which is important. And it was like, oh shit, I never thought of thought about it like that. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and especially the way social work has been recently is like I may have to start planning my exit out of social work. I want to do another 10 years and 10, 15 years tops and retire because I've already been 20, going to be 20 years in. I'm like, I can't do this shit anymore.
No, I agree. And I'm somebody personally, I want to be out of at least active social work within the next decade too. I don't think that this is a career that's meant to sustain people on the front lines for very long based on the systems we have. And, I personally think in the next 5 or 10 years, we're going to see a big jump in pay for social workers and mental health clinicians and a lot of these different types of jobs, even outside of social work, just because of public demand. But I feel like a lot of us just don't have the patience for it at this point. I mean, we've already experienced so much in terms of having low wages, having high risk jobs, having toxic work environments. And the mix, just even when you add that pay in for some of us, it kind of just leaves like a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. So I definitely would like to be here doing other roles and stuff in social work, like either administratively, running my businesses and things like that. But in terms of active work, I don't think it's something that's sustainable for a lot of us.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we continue, for those who don't know who you are, let people know who you are, what you do in our wonderful field of social work.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Jay. So I am a social worker in the state of Michigan. I live right outside of the Detroit area. I have had about 4 years or so of experience with mental health, addiction, and trauma. And within the last year of COVID, I actually transitioned into from my 9 to 5 to working with adults with disabilities and also work with individuals who are experiencing things like burnout, fed up employees who are looking to ultimately make their next big move. So I've gotten into career coaching over the last year, and that's slowly starting to take off and whatnot. So that's kind of a quick summary of what I do right now.
Cool, awesome. No, no. For those that don't know, we connect. Jay and I connected over a year ago. First, I was on his IG live, and then he came on the podcast as part of my social worker spotlight series that I did season 1 of the podcast, and just connecting, doing different different things, talk about different things related to social work. How I think when we spoke last year, we were just coming off of your governor being like attempted kidnapping.
I think so. There's never a dull moment in Michigan. Like other people, it's like you hear about the Democrats and the Republicans, they're just arguing over just stupid stuff. It's like our governor gets kidnapped. And to us, that's like normal. It's like, it's just another day in Michigan, like whatever. Everyone else is like actually like, it's really funny. People started DMing me after that too. And like they were actually DMing me things like, are you okay? Like, is everything okay? Like, is everything going okay? And like they thought like Michigan was getting taken over. Like they didn't know what was going on. And I'm like, yeah, we're fine. Like we're over here chilling. Like, you know, I mean, sucks to be her, but you know, we're like, you know, it shouldn't have happened, but we're chilling over here.
Yeah, yeah, it's been a crazy year and a half, and it's not just COVID. It's just like stuff like that you hear on the news and stuff that's going on in Texas, Florida. Is just every day that we deal with in social work. Just nowhere. It. Uh, I'm trying to like in my head and just like really talk about just us social workers, mental health professionals, just being beyond burnt out. We're traumatized, but we out in the front lines of in the pandemic, try to stay COVID free at the same time. No, we have a whole bunch of clients that we are serving, vulnerable populations that we are serving, and at the same time trying to stay safe ourselves. And our supervisors, administrators won't let us be great and do the work that we need to do or want to do. Just politics as usual in the workforce, and you talk about all the stuff that happens with the burnout and everything else, and especially in the nonprofit sector of the work. So it's we tired. We're all tired, and I went through my first summer of not working, because I worked in the school system and I had the whole summer off, and it's like, what the hell do I do? I was just like, I'm always working. I was always doing home visits in 90-degree, 100-degree weather, and it was like it's nothing, and just pounding pavements, knocking on doors, seeing clients, and doing whatever. And just like the first year, like not doing anything, it was like, oh, okay, like I kind of, it's like a vacation without actually vacation. So now, feel pretty good. Still got my COVID weight on, but I feel pretty good. Of just ready to rock. With work coming in, is like somebody that just came back from vacation. Okay, well, oh, you look great. You look rejuvenated to go back to the stress. So like, I'm ready to go.
I was gonna say it doesn't take long to not look rejuvenated depending on your environment. That's for sure. Like you could take. I know so many people that always talk about how they're gonna go take a vacation, everything's gonna be fine. And it really is just putting a band-aid on a bigger problem, which is a big reason why I really even got into some of my group coaching stuff. Um, among other reasons too, and that's that burnout and workplace stress is a really serious issue. And depending on how your environment is set up at work, it's like a simple vacation just is not going to solve that issue.
Yeah, absolutely. And we spend more time being stressed out before going on a vacation because we got to get all this work done before we leave. And you may have be in a toxic environment, but like, okay, I'm not approving your vacation until your work is done. But like, I already put in the time. You already signed off on it. It's like I'm going, whether like, so I'd rather just get in trouble afterwards. I'm leaving. I got you paying for my plane ticket or whatever. Like I'm out. So it, it, it's it, it's just the stress leading up to the vacation, and it's just like, and then once you're in the vacation, you come back and you got like 1,001 emails, and all this stuff, like, or stuff that was supposed to be followed up on wasn't, and you gotta like pick up the pieces like you never left. So it's
It's a whole thing. And you know what? I was actually just having this conversation the other day. I made a post about this on my Instagram too, where if you're somebody who's working like 16 hours a day, because maybe you took a PTO day or something one day, why are you taking the PTO anymore? Like, why are you not letting that, like, one, why aren't you setting boundaries? But two, if that's really how your job unfortunately functions, which by the way, it shouldn't, maybe we can talk about that in a little bit of detail later on. But if your PTO makes you work double, you're doing free labor once they approve that PTO. Like, I want you guys to really, if you take nothing else from the rest of this conversation today, I am someone who's very avid of that. One of the biggest things in our field, and really a lot of healthy professions I've been talking to lately, is a lot of people are doing a lot of free work. And I just don't get it. I don't get why we've accepted this. I don't get why this is an acceptable thing that we've put into our society. I mean, even when, if you even look back into how things were when the workforce really just started like over 100 years ago, before we really had major regulations and things like that. Even like these, don't get me wrong, like, these individuals, they had very poor working conditions, they were underpaid, there was a lot of stuff we know about that happened, so we're a little bit privileged in some areas of that, right? But the one thing I noticed is that nobody in those times really was working for free. They couldn't work for free. They couldn't afford to work for free. If you were working overtime and you weren't getting paid for it, they're getting another job or they're not going to work, because at the end of the day, you're somebody who has to pay all your, I mean, we're talking about the era of the depression too, right? So if you can't get paid and you're not making your money, you need to go somewhere else where you're going to make that money. And my fear is that we're starting to see history somewhat repeat itself with some of this normalization of free labor, because people just think it's normal nowadays to be in it for, things like I always preach about, in it for the outcome and not the income. I am full-heartedly, shamelessly admit, I am here for the income. And people are like, you're a social worker, how are you here for the income? Because if someone's not going to be here for the income, we're not going to get paid higher anymore. And not having money is the single biggest contributor that I hear for anybody who thinks they're experiencing burnout that I work with. Money is the biggest issue. The second issue is work-life balance. You mix one of those two together with one another, it's not a good time.
Yeah, absolutely. We already now in a profession that's not still not 100%, respected in the field. You might hear, people say, "Oh, you're a social worker. No, thank you for what you do." No, I've heard that, time to time, but it doesn't reflect in the pay. And it's like we're busting our ass doing all this work, being stressed out. Like, at least let me be compensated appropriately for it. And I've been in the field, for myself for so long, and I speak another language. I speak Spanish, and it's like, you need to pay me, like, you know some money, and just like, you want me to do these visits, especially now during like COVID and everything and going on, or even before COVID, like, you want me to do all this work, and like, fine, no problem doing the work, whatever. I like doing it, but like, I got bills to pay too. I'm a single dad
Yeah.
with two kids. Like, like, I need to see some income, and I shouldn't be working two or three jobs just to make ends meet. And a lot of non social workers that are working two, three, four jobs. They work a 9 to 5, and then they do like a few hours in the evening, and then they got another job on the weekends, and really got like Sunday to relax, or they're working Sundays as well. So it's crazy.
And you know what? That's something that, excuse my language, it completely pisses me off, because the fact that we've again normalized the style of working, and not only normalize the style of working, like let's even just take the self-care out of it, right? Like, we'll talk about self-care later because we need that. But like, even if you're willing to sacrifice self-care for money. Get something out of it. If you're going to drive yourself crazy over it, get yourself compensated. One of the things that I've really been thinking about lately is the fact that, we go to university and we start with our BSW usually. And what ends up happening for us is we go and then they tell us, well, to make any real money, you have to go get an MSW. Okay, so you go get the MSW. Well, the MSW for entry level positions, it's higher salary, but not by drastically much. It's not like this big increase. So we've normalized small raises as being larger already. So that's one issue I have. And then they tell you, go get your clinical license. That's where the real money is, once you get the master's. Well, again, I don't know many people whose lives have drastically changed by getting their clinical license. I'm not saying don't get it, but I am saying that it doesn't magically open all these doors. It does allow you to get other positions, but most people aren't getting those positions for a variety of reasons. A lot of people don't know how to market themselves. They don't teach you how to market yourself as an asset in social work. And so that's like why me and some other people on Instagram who are social workers are going into career coaching, because we really want to help people, not even just in social work, some of us, but even in healthcare and mental health and all that kind of stuff. We want to help people level up at this point, because people don't realize how valuable of a skill that they have and how much money that they can truly earn. And it's not, you're not going to find the money doing it the traditional route of getting the MSW and getting the licensure. It's just, it takes a little bit more than that. But once you figure out the key to get it, you really can earn money in this field, doing a lot of different things.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I use myself for an example. Like I've taken the exam many times. That damn ASWB exam that I keep fucking
Which is
failing.
already expensive as it is. Like that
Yeah,
exam, and
it's
I coach for that too, by the way. I also coach for that exam, but I don't have resources for anyone listening. But that exam in and of itself is already expensive in and of itself. Not to mention you're investing in people like me. There's people who are way more expensive than me, and it's just like the craziest thing. Like I know someone who spent $5,000 to pass her exam for the eighth time.
yeah, and they that's absolutely insane. And no, me working in New York the majority of my career, and it's like okay, like I've been lucky enough to have jobs and make increases without needing a license for you just have to do the work and like go on LinkedIn, go on Indeed every day, and like and not just go on Indeed the first couple pages of job postings. It's like you got to do like 10, 11 pages. Like there's stuff out there if you just sit down and do the work. And even when you go to grad school or just being in the field and just make connections with people. Like I know a lot of people is like, oh, don't make friends with your coworkers, which I find that absolutely ridiculous. And
Mhm.
you're gonna need them for at least a job reference, or like, or they become your peers in the field. Once you leave a job, it's like, hey, I know you. Like, what's going on at that job? Like, hey, like, I'm 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 hiring. They hiring where I'm at. Like, come through and apply. So it's all about like definitely the networking piece is played a huge part of like and even me getting a field placement in grad school because the damn grad school didn't want to help me get my second placement. I had to do it on my own. So
Mhm.
like I hit up like my old supervisor that I knew where she worked at and still communicated with her and was like, hey, like I need a field placement. Can you help me? And she did. So it was like, you know, you could definitely make money without getting the licensure. And if you have other interests, like, now is a time, especially with COVID, is shoot your shot. Whatever you want to do, your interests are like, do it. Like, and
Mhm.
that's pretty much what we both have been doing this past year and a half. So.
Yeah, like literally, this is the time that I always tell people that you've been really thinking about starting your business, or you're trying, even if you just want to start a business and you don't even know what it is, this is really the time to start pivoting and just figuring out exactly what you want to do or what you don't want to do, and just start trying out some things. Like I literally started about 4 or 5 weeks after I passed my clinical exam, and I just said, I'm going to coach people for this exam, and I all I did was create an Eventbrite link, go on Google Meets, made a presentation that took me not that long. It's a 3 hour presentation, so it probably took me like, I don't know, 2 days to make maybe. It wasn't really hard. It was me just transcribing my notes that I did and just adding some tweaks here and there. And you just start talking and then you start building from there. And you just decide, okay, this is working, this is not. But this is really the time for trial and error. There's so many of us now who are at home, and little insight, social workers, we all know you guys do it, but like we're out here working on Instagram, we're out here working and doing other meetings. Like we know what you're doing. Like you're not fooling anyone at this point. You're not fooling anybody at this point, not even your employers. I don't think the employers care at this point. But like we know you're multitasking, and so we know that this is the time that you really should be capitalizing on yourself. And so if you're somebody who really wants to even break out into entrepreneurship, even if you've just had the side hustle that you like sell something here and there, right? This is the time to really start enhancing it. You really have nothing really much to lose at this point, except what, maybe time. I mean, I've wasted time on so many weird toxic things, and so I would rather waste time on something like this.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Is now's the time to if you know somebody's email, like or DM people. The worst that can happen is just no, and definitely like use LinkedIn as to your advantage as well. Like I was like really good for a while, like on LinkedIn and like every day, and I kind of like fell fell off again. But LinkedIn is definitely a tool. Instagram. There's like Facebook groups, different things. So it's just a matter of just trying something out. Even just to start a LLC, just to start it, just you'll be so happy you did. Just then, end of the year on your taxes, like you just dramatically reduce your tax bill, and whatever you spend for the year, you just able to write it off. So even you can start it now, start it September, October, November, and just whatever. Like you'll get a nice chunk of change next year if you were to start
Mhm.
your LLC. So I was definitely happy I started mine last year in October. So I was definitely
What?
happy with my tax check.
Oh, for sure. My clinical supervisor, actually, she just started her LLC in the last year or so, and when she got her tax, I don't know exactly how, like, this is the side I'm still learning because I'm getting ready to file taxes and all sorts of stuff. So this is like this is how new I'm at to this. So I'll give you guys updates later. But like what she told me she did was she took her stuff to her tax specialist, and she doesn't even know what they did, but somehow they figured out that her company and her LLC made a loss. Now keep in mind she's working her 40 hours a week, so a loss to people like us really is not that serious to us. Like we're kind of just developing our business. And I usually tell people this: the first year or two when you're in business, you probably are making a loss because you're trying new things. You really don't know what you're doing with finances. Like there's a lot of different tools out there, and they're telling you if you do this, you're doing it wrong. If you do that, you're doing it wrong. I always tell people you're gonna figure it out with trial and error. Don't stress about getting things wrong right now. Just kind of take everything in as a learning experience. But with that being said, her learning experience where she kind of took like I don't know, it was like a few hundred. They figured out she made like 200 or 300 hours less than what she actually brought in. And she somehow got like a couple $1,000 back for some reason. And I have no clue how that even works. So go see your tax specialist. Like, I'm not good at that kind of stuff. Like, I'm going to be working with financial people, but like, she got so much money back. It was crazy.
Yeah, just because of the loss, like I'll be transparent, like because you're writing off your expenses. So even like these headphones I'm using, like I use that, as a write off. Like so, anything I purchase, any sort of and again, it has to be like related to like your LLC. So any like educational classes, like business classes you take, you buying books, like you're learning about business, or like investing stuff, or whatever, or learning about investing. Like you could write that off towards like your business. So like so I signed up for all these like different type of membership groups and stuff like that. So I was able to write all these classes off. So it ended up being like over like $4,000, and then like I was able to get, because of that, reduce my taxable income from like my 9 to 5, and then my other side hustle, that my Zumba classes that I was doing last year. So it was like when I saw when she told me how much I was getting, I'm like, whoa, this is like,
You're
th-
like over here thinking you're gonna get like a couple hundred back. Like, okay, cool, like whatever.
this is just a federal. This is not a federal and state. So it was like, okay.
Oh my god, it's funny.
So like it's stuff like that going back to social work and grad school, is like they want you to get the license, and or get your clinical license, okay, but they don't teach you how to start. If you want to start a private practice, okay, go start a private practice. That's where the money is at. Okay, show me how to form an LLC in order to do it properly. Tell me about taxes that go into that. Like there's so much into like starting a business, then just like go open up a go and open up a a nonprofit, or go open up your own private practice. So like,
And you know what's really crazy? And I don't mean to minimize this or make it seem like it's like super easy because there are some steps with it. But like I always saw people who worked in private practice and did their own thing. I literally thought it was like a logistical nightmare. I thought it was like a thing where it was like a lot, like it would probably take a lot and whatnot. The basis of it is get an LLC for it, which by the way, I know plenty of people who are not doing that. They're just doing it as a sole proprietorship, which I don't really give business advice like that. I always tell people do you, but just know that when you make the LLC, it separates your personal assets from your business assets, which
Mm.
helps you with taxes. And that's all I'm going to say on that. But you get the LLC, you get the liability insurance for your business, which isn't that much. And then to make your place HIPAA compliant, if you're not even going to get a building or get an office space and you just want to do a telehealth private practice or something like that, and you want to do it the most basic way you can, and you don't want to invest in an EMR system because you're small and you're new, right? I have a printer that's right over here. You print your notes, you sign them, you do it in a format that's kind of legible. And this is a cash only practice right now. And you have a filing cabinet that locks. That makes you HIPAA compliant. I mean, there's a few other things that go into it too, obviously, like business planning and stuff like that. But that's about the basis of it. It's not this overly complicated thing, yet nobody teaches you.
Mm.
And by the way, there are people out there. This is another side hustle in business you guys can get into, low key. There are people out there that file LLC paperwork, and you pay them a couple hundred to do it, and then pay them the filing fee along with their own fee, and they just do the paperwork for you. But the paperwork is not even that complicated.
Yeah, there's stuff like LegalZoom and all these other stuff that I mean that's how I started like with the LegalZoom, just asking people around and like, hey, I don't use LegalZoom. All right, so they pretty much did everything for me, paid the fee, and they sent me a whole freaking binder with paperwork in here. Like, all right, perfect. so So yeah, there's so much stuff out now, and then you got to obviously like do your own research in terms of because there's so many people like with the entrepreneurship, and people make it seem like it's so easy and it's so flashy and get the money real quick, and it's like it's not like that at all. And people, different people talk about like the same thing, so that who's like telling the truth. Like it's almost like too much information like to really like try to like narrow it down. It could be overwhelming as well. So it's just do your own research best you can.
No, I completely agree with that. And I will say people do kind of make it seem like it is more easy. And I do tend to talk about the positive sides of it because I think there is a lot more to gain in going into business for yourself. That's one of the big things I talk about on my page too. But there is a lot of good benefits of going into business for yourself, but there are a lot of logistical steps to do. And so these are the two types of entrepreneurs I notice that kind of float around on social media and on Instagram. And I don't judge either one of these, to be honest with you, because I think they both have their pros and cons. But the two I often see is the person who is either niched down. So this is kind of like, so far, this is kind of like me right now, where I'm doing the burnout coaching and things like that. I also do exam prep stuff as like a side hustle. This is where we started my business. But that's more just something now I'm starting to do transition out of and just do more so for fun and just make easy, business money here and there with people. But like, mostly you're going to see people who are really niche down and you know exactly what they do. They probably offer one service and their whole brand revolves around it. The other type of entrepreneurs are kind of the people doing everything and they're really marketing everything. So maybe they're doing the coaching, the private practicing, the merch thing, this podcast thing on wellness, fitness. Like they're doing a bunch of different things. They're doing a bunch of different presentations and they're on a bunch of different topics, right? And the con to that is what happens is people really don't know what you do. So you're not going to get really a bigger audience to really tune into your products because you don't have a specialty. Now, the good side to it is if you're a creative person and can think of cool stuff, you can bring out something every single month and make hustle money, I guess you could call it, and you can turn hustle money into a business. It's not a lot of people succeed at entrepreneurship doing it that way, but if you're a very creative person that sees a need that's ever changing all the time, you could be successful at that type of entrepreneurship, but it's very difficult to pivot. Whereas the person who's niche down, people tend to start over time. I usually say this, the people who aren't niche down, they make the quicker cash. The people who are niche down, you may be working for free for a little bit, you may be working for significant discounts, but what you're doing over time is you're building a referral service so that people say, hey, I know this person, they do this, and so I'm going to refer you to them. And so what happens is that in the long term, for the most part, these individuals who know how to market themselves successfully, they have a longer standing business. Whereas somebody who is just kind of bopping around, bringing out new stuff all the time, that's completely irrelevant to what they've been doing, they're always just coming out with new products. And unless you're really good at making those products or services, your business doesn't tend to last very long, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I see a bunch of different people talk about different things. Business credit has been a big thing that's been, trying to focus on that. So like I know like 3 or 4 different people who talk about business credit like all the time. It's like, okay, so this is almost like too much information, and like
Mhm.
where do I go to try to like obtain that for like my business, and it's just a lot of stuff going on, and just definitely get a LLC is just for like tax purposes. And if you already bought stuff, like, hey, I could write this off like for the year, and just figuring out as you go. I'm still figuring things out like as I'm going. So it's a work in progress. As long as I don't get in trouble with the IRS, like I'm good. That's all I care about right now. So
Ag- Agreed, absolutely.
I've talked to the Delaware's the Department of Taxation quite a few times. I'm gonna make sure I'm doing it right, because I don't want to get in trouble with you guys, and I legit have those type of conversations with them. So they're like, "No, everything's good so far." I'm like, "All right."
Oh my God, that's funny.
Yes. So let's talk about like all this. You're doing seem like you're doing a lot of stuff. Let's break down all the things that you have been doing.
Sure, sure. Yeah. So basically, how my business journey started, like I talked about earlier, is I started doing exam prep coaching for social workers. Mainly because I was trying to figure out my life with entrepreneurship. I knew I wanted to go into business for myself. It's something I've always wanted to do. But I was kind of at a point in my career where I was like, okay, what exactly do I really want to do? Because I did know I want to go into private practice, but I also knew, well, everyone's going into that at this point, and the return on investment with private practice, like people, it's one of those businesses where you really have to learn how to market. Otherwise, it's always just going to be a side hustle, right? So that's going to be something that's going to take time to build out as it is. So I'm like, what is something that I could really do now? I go into exam prep coaching, and I'm very transparent with my students. I'm very transparent with anyone who comes to my class. I am not a fan of the ASWB exam. It is not my favorite topic to teach. I teach it 5 to 10 hours a month, and I bring in my money, and that's how this works, right? I get you guys the easiest experience possible and make it as cheap as possible and make it as fun as possible, because it's not exactly the best topic to talk about, and the exam is stupid. And that's my personal opinions. But I do like seeing people succeed and getting over a barrier, right? That's causing them a lot of stress and a lot of anxiety. So that's ultimately why I ended up going to do that. Well, what I found in my conversations while talking to people for exam prep is that before exam prep and now during it, they're experiencing high amounts of burnout and high amounts of stress and high amounts of workplace stress. And a lot of people were telling me it seems like they can't even pass the exam because they're so stressed out at their job. Like they can't study when they get home because their workloads are too high, or when they do get to study at home, they can't concentrate because of stupid stuff that was going on at their job. And it became like a recurring theme. Like people were either stressed out while studying or stressed out and can't study because of their work and can't focus.
Mhm.
And so this is something that's kind of connected to stuff that I have been talking about kind of unofficially for years now. But I've never like went really public with it. I didn't really think about even turning it into a business. Um, but I've always been the person in our field, always talking about we need to be paid what we're worth, and we need to, first of all, be paid to work. I'm not an advocate really of salary work unless your job really is a job that can be done in 40 hours or less. So I've always talked about getting your money. I've always talked about, um, having your job as a job, and giving yourself a work-life balance and things like that. I've always given people career advice just because it was something that I genuinely like talking about. Never thought about turning it into a business, and because I didn't think I'd enjoy it. Like shocker right now. So it's really come in the last, I would say the last year I've been doing it, but I was kind of like test piloting it last year. Like I would do resume reviews here and there. I would do like interview prep people here and there. It wasn't something I was really advertising, but it was someone came across me. I'd be like, okay, well, I'll help you out, do this. It was just something I really enjoyed. And so now that I've seen kind of like a general theme of a lot of helping professions, I'm really working specifically on burnout coaching for them because a lot of people are really trying to navigate workplace stress and anxiety and trying to figure out, okay, do I quit my job? Do I go back into the workforce and find a new industry? Should I go into business for myself? Are there things that at work that I can change? And maybe I'm the problem, right? And it's always like this weird, complex thing that you're trying to navigate. And what I find that people end up doing when they're experiencing burnout is there's a 4-step cycle that I actually talk about in my group coaching program right now that I'm testing out. And I call it the burnout job hopping cycle. And basically what happens is you start off and you get a new job. And this could be when you either just left a really crappy job, or maybe you are in a place where you just graduated and you just started and you're just happy to be there, right? Super happy to be here, gonna go to work. You feel euphoric, you feel happy, you feel excited for life. And then what happens within 3 to 6 months is you see how the job kind of is working, but you're kind of in this period of they're kind of babying you still. So you don't really get a good idea what the job is like,
Right.
but they're kind of like spoon feeding you, but they're kind of not. And then within 6 to 9 months on average, and these timelines are a little subjective because people can, do them faster or shorter, but like around 9 months, I usually find people end up really getting sick of their job and they're like, okay, that's it. I know I don't want to be here. And I'm just kind of over it at this point. And we kind of think that we just need an escape plan. And by the way, I'm an avid job hopper, so I'm not even dissing job hopping right now, but I talk
Oh
about
my.
strategic job hopping. I am an avid job hopper, like for real, but I'm not an avid sporadic job hopper. So here's how the cycle continues. When you start doing that method where it's like, okay, I want to move on to the next one, okay? Well, what happens is you start off planning, but then you don't because work is busy and you're tired and you don't want to be on the computer. So you apply here and there, or you look for like one job and then a few weeks go by and you don't do it again. And then you do it one more time a few weeks later and then you don't do it again. Well, what happens is by stage 4, you're in this mode of burnout, which means you're in fight or flight. Most of us don't want to fight, so we run. So what do you start doing? You start pulling out your phone, you go on Indeed because it's the easiest one to go on to, and you start quick applying for every single job that there is out there under the title social work, whether you're qualified or not. You're basically going fishing. Like you're just throwing the cast out and see who gets it. And because you didn't do your research, because you didn't find an environment that could be right for you, because you didn't even ask about salary, you just wanted out of the environment you're in so that you can have a change, you're now kind of in the cycle again of possibly being in another dysfunctional job that's burned out, which is why a lot of social workers feel like that there's really no good industries or good jobs out there for them. And I tell people, if you're going to job hop, if you're going to change jobs, then do it in a way that's more strategic and start looking for key things in job descriptions, start looking up reviews on Glassdoor, start networking on LinkedIn or Facebook or wherever you are for these positions, and see what's going to be the best fit, and don't be afraid to ask those questions. I also compare it as if you were dating someone. First of all, you don't want to appear desperate. No one wants to date a desperate person at all. So when you're out there desperate, people can see it. And usually when you are desperate and you're showing it very actively, it's usually the toxic jobs are going to pick up on you because they know for a while you're going to actually just do whatever they tell you to do for a while. And so they end up bringing you on. The people who are hard to get are hard to get for a reason. And same thing with the jobs, right? You want to make sure you find that fit that's right for you. And when you go, there's a lot of talk I see from other job coaches where it's like, here's how you impress people on your interview. I don't teach people how to impress people on their interviews. I teach people to find their dream solutions. And I don't even like saying dream. I'm trying to find a new word for that because I don't dream of labor personally. But I do think that there is a good scenario or a good job for you out there. And you just have to take that time to look, because short term disappointment and discouragement is okay if you're going to have a lifetime or a very long time, at least, of a job that you genuinely enjoy, that pays you well, and allows you to have the life outside of work that you've always wanted.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll piggyback on that. Like, I definitely have done my fair share of job hopping, but I've always been strategic with my job hopping. Especially, I mentioned before that I have two kids, and always think about them in terms of schooling, if I'm going to be able to take them to school, pick them up, or if emergencies happen, I got to take them to the hospital and stuff like that. Like now I have more of a better support system that realistically can, like, help me, with that, better without, I used to have like my mom or dad like picking up my my kids, and they're elderly parents, and God rest his soul. My mom like passing away last year, but she was helping me a lot, picking them up, and to become, it became like not realistic anymore to do that. So I'm always looking for a new job. Like even when I start a job, okay, how in my head I'm like, okay, how long, am I think I'm gonna be here? Like I'm not trying to leave like the week after. Like, okay, I could definitely want to stick out year, 2 years, 3 years, and then fortunately, jobs, even the job I just left in June, like okay, like okay, I finally found a job. I got like all these different benefits with state benefits, 401k and stuff. Like, started putting money in, and okay, I'm gonna do like, feel like doing like 10 years here. I could do 10 years and just like do an early retirement if Social Security is still around in another 10 years, like, and no, retire early. But no, that didn't happen, so I had to like pivot during the summer, find something else. But like I mentioned before, like, go on the reviews on Indeed, go on like Glassdoor, like, I had a grad school professor who was really good in terms of, you got to network, and like she literally took a piece of paper, sent it around the classroom, like, put your phone numbers, put your name, put your phone number, put your email. I'm gonna make copies, and every one of you is gonna get a copy of this. Like, you need a network in social work. Like, I wish I would have like did that a little bit more. And I think I found that paper like recently. So I'm like, I don't know if any emails are still active, or phone numbers, whatever. But she was really into doing that. So like I mentioned before, like, definitely you have to network. Even like your coworkers, if you got that one coworker you're real cool with, and then you just, if they leave, or if you leave before them, or you guys competing who's gonna leave first, because I've had that experience that like we both leave it, like we gonna figure out who's gonna leave first, and make a
Oh,
competition.
it becomes like a whole competition. I think I actually had that at a job once. It was fun, actually.
I've done that a few times. I think like my last two jobs prior, I've actually did that. So it's and then like, oh, I found I'm going this place, and you just make connections like that. I just keep in touch with people, because you never know who you might need in terms of references. Because when you get a job, they offer you like, okay, I'm gonna need references. Who the hell are you gonna put down if you don't have these connections everywhere? So like it's important to
It
have
is.
that.
It is.
And it's that's important. And in terms of the job hopping, going back to that, like, I've had jobs that, like, when I first started in the field in foster care, like that, my first day on the job, they had me doing like UCRs, and meeting parents like the first day. I've had jobs that throw you into the fire the first day, or if, like you mentioned before, they baby you for 3 to 6 months, and whatever, and then like, okay, like, you're you off to the races after that. Or I've had jobs that, different situations for different things. So it's like you either get thrown into the fire, or they baby you for a while, and it's just like you see the ins and outs. Or I've had jobs that are like, you start the first couple of days, and you're going through like here, look at the case records. They don't train you on what to look for in the case records, but just look at the case records just to see what's going on with the clients. And then like I had a job where I did that, and saw like four different supervisors signing off on notes. I'm like, what the heck is this? Why is there so many different supervisors? Like, and then you realize like day one, or like, oh shit, not the job that they told me about what's going to be in the interview. And then like what's up with this turnover. So it's just a lot of different things that just being mindful, and you got everybody's situation is different, and we live in a time where you want to do something for yourself. So, now's the time to, you got an idea, try it out, and if it don't work, try out another idea that you might have. Just whatever's in your head, just do it.
Hmm. No, I completely agree with that. And just some of the stuff even you just said now, um, in terms of like learning about the jobs that are for you and whatnot. I am a pro ear hustler. And I know that's kind of harder in times of Zoom, but like I am pro ear hustling. And so you can do this one of two ways. If you have a person on Zoom that you talk with regularly, or a few people you talk with regularly, and you're new, always ask about what they feel about the job. Ask them one on one. Now, don't be the person that said Amber or Brian, whoever said this about what, don't be that person, but you do want to talk to these people about these positions, and most people are going to tell you the truth. Most people are going to, now they're going to sugarcoat it because they're scared they're going to get in trouble, but you can hear certain things that they're saying in their tone of voice, how they're enunciating words, how they're trying to put things down for you. Usually people want to give you the heads up because people like to talk about themselves. It's just a character thing within psychology and how our minds are set up. So people love to talk about ourselves. It's why people love listening to podcasts, because they love listening to hear people talk about themselves, just like we like to talk about ourselves, right? So
Right.
that's the first thing you can do if you're in a situation where you work from home and you're on Zoom and maybe you weren't feeling this job. And that, by the way, if you hate your job while you work from home on Zoom, that's a whole other issue too. That's a that's a whole other issue if you don't have to see them every day. Now, if you're going into agencies and schools and stuff like that, if you don't want to talk to someone directly about it yet, start listening to conversations that people are having in the office and in the break room, seeing how they feel about their job, or even just start paying attention how people talk to one another. How does upper management talk to certain employees? I guarantee you, if you see a manager that's disrespecting an employee, it's not because that employee is horrible. 9 times out of 10, that's not going to be why they're doing it. They're usually doing it to a lot of different people, or there's favoritism, or even worse, there even.
Mhm.
But there's something dysfunctional about that job environment that's going on. So just pay attention to your surroundings when you get to a new position. And I would even say this, even if you have this opportunity, do it while you're at the interview too. You usually just kind of like see things going on at the interview. They try to make it look all clean and perfect when you come in. Um, but just start picking up on certain cues. Like even if it just seems like chaotic or a disorganized mess, like people are running around frantically, that's going to be a key sign that you may want to run frantically out the door, possibly, because that might not be
Right.
an environment for you.
Exactly. Yeah, I had, damn, I just had a thought about what, just piggyback, and it just like slipped my mind. But yeah, it's a lot of red flag. Oh, like I always been like definitely like to see my surroundings at work, and like especially nonprofits. I think I had one job that was just mostly men, but I'm usually like the only man in the social work department. So,
Right.
full of women. So I usually like, just sit back, listen to conversations. A lot of stuff would be about work, but others, I like to like play around and like hear like the girl talk and like throw my 2 cents in, whatever, because like I have a daughter. So like you talking about stuff that might help me to care for my daughter. Like I'm gonna listen and want to like chime in and ask a question. But usually just sit back and just listen, and have like supervisors or directors come in and just asking questions, or the way they ask questions, or even like your team meetings, your staff meetings. Yes, a lot of some of these meetings can should have been an email, but they just want to see your face. And I've had supervisors that are horrible supervisors that the best thing they did was like send an email, and just that's the best thing they could do, is just send an email about something, just like to cover themselves or just look like they're doing something, but they're really not doing anything. And so it's There's also like the white privilege that's been going on, and just the whole like just the way the country is, so divided, politically, and that could somehow come across some way or another in your job as well. So just to throw that out there as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, there's so many things going on now, just like that stuff, like racism, sexism, homophobia. It's all going on in workplaces right now, and it's being highlighted in ways that we've never really even imagined. And honestly, God, this is like the kind of the time where it's really okay to speak up about it now. And I don't mean to say this in a, I'm trying to choose my words carefully, but the fact of the matter is that these topics are trendy, and right now, companies are recognizing that these things are trendy, because if it's not trending, it's not all over the news, it's not being plastered, then there's not going to be any social change. Chances are you're going to be the one who's looked at as the problem when you report it. It's kind of starting to switch now,
Hmm.
because companies are all of a sudden realizing, hey, it's not okay to be a racist, sexist piece of shit anymore. So, and we can't have policies that do that, because it's not a good look. And we're going to have employees walk out of these jobs, and we're going to have customers not come back to us, or clients not come back to us. And with the labor shortages we've seen, between these issues and then just general workplace stuff, and in general right now that we're experiencing, we have seen very clearly that employees leaving and how we're labeled as like dispensable, which we are, but that's a whole topic for another day. But because we are looked at that way in the job market, we're dispensing ourselves out the door now. And because of that, we're actually taking the money with us, because you don't have enough people now to make the product to make you more money now. So by us losing, they thought that this was a cost effective strategy, but they're losing so much money because they're realizing, hey, a lot of people don't want to work, do two, three, four persons jobs at once, all at the same time, and still work over. And then for our industry, it's work over with no pay.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, stay after 5, and especially like on a Friday. It's like, no, it's time to go.
First
Time
of
to
all,
go
I don't
home.
answer the phone after 1 on a Friday. Like, don't call me, don't text me, don't email me. You'll get 2 on Monday. Like that's like 1 or 2. That's my boundary. Unless someone's dying, like no, like we're not today.
Yeah, you have to put your own boundaries and in situations. And I've always been good at just leaving work at work unless something like really like crazy happened, or like something unusual like happened that was like stressing me out. Or usually up until recently, always had like at least a half hour, 45-minute commute to like decompose what happened. And then as soon as I get home, like, all right, like I was able to like release whatever happened at work, for that day, and think about the next day. So definitely find ways to you know de-stress. Self-care. Talk about trendy topics. No, self-care is always, especially on Twitter, people always talking about self-care and stuff like that. What do you do for self-care?
Well, for self care after work, and just piggybacking off something you said, I think that putting away work after work is a great thing, especially if you work at home. So, like you said, when we used to have like commutes and stuff like that for 45 minutes to an hour, we had time to decompress. We left physical things at work, and that was pretty much it. Like, we didn't really have to think about work. We left our phone at the office. We checked it in the morning, and we basically had our stress from 8 a.m. to 4:30 or 5 p.m. And that's pretty much how that worked. And now for a lot of us working from home, I literally, like, I have my computer right here, like my work computer. I mean, I'm at work still, I'm on lunch doing this, but like I have my computer right on my desk right now. So literally at the end of the night, I make a very conscious effort to charge my phone up in a very specific spot, put my computer in a very specific spot. And the specific spot, by the way, it's like I have an L-shaped desk. I just put it on the other side of the desk, but that's like transitioning my mind into saying, okay, this is done. I don't care if it's like, I'm one of those people that, like, I'm not really as out of sight, out of mind. Like, I'll ignore my phone, but I have to like physically move it out of the way of where I'm doing it. For some of you guys, you may have to put it in your closet, and then that's how you leave work at work, for your self care. And so the first thing I do when I get off, no matter how late it is now, is I'll either go to the gym in my apartment complex and I'll walk on the treadmill, or I go for a walk if it's still nice outside. Um, and that's just kind of like a weird, I guess it's kind of like my commute, because now I'm going on like a 20-minute walk around my apartment complex. So it's kind of like the commute where you're de-stressing and then you've transitioned out of work mode in a way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So stuff like that I do. And then honest to God, people don't believe me when I say this. Doing stuff like this is self-care for me, like working ultimately on my business, my ultimate vision. I ultimately in the next several years want to be working fully for myself. I don't really want to have to rely on anyone else. I want to make sure I have my own streams of income intact. And that is self-care for me. Building content is self-care for me. Coming on these podcasts is self-care for me. So everyone's self-care kind of looks a little different. For some people, they'll look at my life and they'll go, that's way too time consuming. I don't want that. That's stressful. Well, to which I say that everybody's self-care is going to look a little bit different.
Mhm.
And what you choose to spend your time on, it doesn't really matter what you're doing. And whether you're just sitting down, laying on the couch, building content, going out with friends, reading a book, no matter what you're consuming time, it doesn't really matter what you're doing. At the end of the day, everything, no matter, even if you're doing nothing, is time consuming. So just pick what you ultimately want to do, and don't worry about if it's labeled in society as time consuming or stressful. Like find what you love to do. I know somebody who would go after work to yoga for 6 months because it's supposed to be, stress free, whatever. They hated it. They did not like stretching. They did not like doing this thing, and it was just not for them. And to this day, I don't understand why, because I'm a big fitness and mental health person too. But I get it. They don't want to move. They don't want to exercise. And they figured out that literally listening to their favorite podcast on their couch decreased their stress so much after work. But you have to find the right thing that's right for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we go back to everybody's situation, it is different. So you got to work what's best for you, or whatever that is. Like me doing the podcast has become therapeutic, for me, and just using it, to networking with other social workers. So that's part of my self care. Like no, I was really into exercising before pandemic, and so that was my self care. Just watching TV, watching like First Take or like Undisputed, or watching the View, like during the summer. That was like my self care. So everybody's situation is different. Just do what works for you. And I want to go back to the Zoom thing, because there's jobs that have become nonprofits have become even more stressful with Zoom, because the supervisors, they just want to set up meetings just to see your face, where it could have just been on an email. Like, I don't want to see your face, not even on
Oh
Zoom.
my God. Yeah, that is my thing. And you know what? Given I was in a weird transition period, I guess I would say, when we in March of 2020, when all this started going down. Because I was the person where I was like, I'd rather work in office. I don't want to work from home. I've had one work from home job that I had that I really loved before this. But the reason I loved it was because I could go to the office when I wanted. So I kind of associate with like me being productive and things being easier with the office. And it kind of took me to like the last few months to transition out of that mindset slowly, because it wasn't necessarily the office that was keeping me productive and sane and whatnot. It was literally the freedom for me to go wherever I wanted, and so including my house. And so there were times where I would work and, if I had computer work to do and I'm just doing a report, nothing, HIPAA sensitive or anything like that. I might, when they started letting things dine and open back up, I would go to a coffee shop to do some notes or reports. I might go to the park with my charged laptop and my hotspot and just do it there. And it was just, to me, it was just the freedom of like being different places. With that being said, I've learned very quickly in the last few months, especially, I don't need to see your face anymore. I really don't. In fact, the one thing that and it happened today too, but the one thing that triggers me for some reason that I can't understand why is when supervisors have a meeting of meeting members of like a 3 to 7 group. and they literally have to announce to you, oh, by the way, I need everyone to have their cameras on, as if we're not going to do it. Like, to me, it's just the weirdest. It's just the most. Does that anger you at all? Like,
I mean, I when I have a meeting with a supervisor, or at least in the past, like I would have my camera on unless for whatever reason, like working from home, like my mom or dad had a question to ask me, or they're like barging into the room or like needing
yeah,
something, so I turn it off real quick, and unmute myself real quick, and if they had a question or whatever. But my at least my dad was like very respectful. Like I was
yeah.
at work or something, and only keep checked in. Be like, elderly parents are like, oh, "You hungry? You ate?" So like, but like, besides that, like they were like, respectful of my time, and just like
Yeah.
work whatever. So like there was never, or even like recently, like with the kids or whatever, like I might shut it off real quick and then turn it back on. So it was never. I always had like my camera on. So it's just like I just knew like right off the bat, like you just having this meeting because you just want to see our faces. That's it. That could have just
I
been
don't
in the email.
I don't need you to see my face that badly. Like, it's weird. And it's so but I guess I get it. But it's so weird to me because it's something that, especially in a group like that, for most of society, it's like it's common sense to turn your camera on a camera streaming media meeting thing. Like, so it's just I don't know. It's the reason it bothers me is I think it's really the power dynamic. It's really that power dynamic of, I'm gonna make you turn on that camera. I can't control anything else, but I'm gonna control you. And you can see that with certain bosses. Whereas other bosses, they're kind of like us. I don't care if I see your face. And 99% of the time, we're the type of people, and this is like such a weird conversation to have about it, but like, we're the type that are going to just turn on the cameras and we don't care and we're not thinking of it like that. But it's when that supervisor says, I need everyone to turn them on. It's just, you can hear it in the
Yeah,
voice.
yeah, the
They can't
voice. Yeah,
control, you know?
one time in a meeting last year, so I wear my Laker jersey like at home, like I'm at home, like I'm not gonna be
Yeah.
wearing a collar shirt or whatever, like until I came here to Delaware, worked in the school district. Then like I was dressed a little bit more appropriately, but like I'm at home, like I'm like in my bedroom because that's the only place I I could do it. If you see like my bed, I try to make sure like it didn't look like I was like sitting on my bed, but I was on my bed. Uh, and one time I wore a shirt because I was selling these shirts. It says, once you go, because I'm Puerto Rican, so it says, once you go Rican, you'll always be freaking. So
Mhm.
the program director was like, Bass, and she actually like read off my shirt in the middle of the Zoom class, of the Zoom
Yeah.
meeting, and it's like, yeah, this is a 5:05 p.m. conversation to have, not 8:30, 8:40 in the morning.
I know.
Like she like, really read my shirt. I'm like,
I mean, do you want to buy one? Like, I don't know.
it's for sale, but it's a 5:05 conversation.
I mean, shoot, if you want to buy a shirt, that's a 902 conversation if you really want to have it.
But it's just stuff, little stupid things like that. It's just like the work is, and the work sometimes you're at jobs where the work is not so hard. It's just administration makes the jobs harder than it needs to be, and they find some, even on Zoom, they find some way to make jobs harder than it needs to be. So
Well,
it has,
to me, it's interesting because I think what the process really is these managers and these administration, they think that they're doing prevention work by putting in all these extra steps in place. And really what ends up happening is when you do this, you actually do, and I just had a conversation about this actually ironically yesterday in my group coaching program. But you're putting on this extra level of anxiety that's actually consuming their thought processes, that's actually slowing the workflow down.
Mm.
And so you think you're being preventative and really you're causing it. And so, I've always told people, and they think the idea is they don't want to like have, like, let's talk about a missed report, for example. You don't want to have a missed report. And so we're trying to prevent that from happening. But what I've learned is that the coworkers who are going to get it done, they're going to get it done if they're going to get it done. Or the ones who are not going to do it, they're just not going to do it. And the ones that are struggling, they're going to struggle regardless if you're micromanaging them or not. And if they're struggling, they're probably struggling more if you're micromanaging them, to be honest with you. So, and then the example I'm even thinking of, I don't want to use her name and to give too info to identify, but she works for a company. They use a video tracking system where when you clock in, when you take lunch, when you leave, when you go from one appointment to the next, when you are doing a report, you basically have to give like every 30 minutes to an hour, you have to film yourself for like 15 to 30 seconds explaining what you're doing and send it to the CEO. And if you don't send it to the CEO wants a personal meeting with you and they have a whole issue. That is a whole level of toxic I don't even want to deal with.
Oh my God, that's
I was like, I am hearing anxiety for you. I'm anxious for you. I'm anxious now. It is not something I want to go through.
this just got me anxious to think about that. That's beyond it insane. Like I would forget just doing the video and just sending it.
I would see, I'm rude. And really what I would have told, I really would just tell the boss, like, do you want me to just Instagram live it for the day? You can follow me and buy a shirt while you're at it. Like, I don't care.
Exactly, like just be like YouTube stream and YouTube live and just like follow like my every move for the day. It's like that's insane.
It's almost like a stalker X is how I compare it. It's like, like when you're in a dysfunctional situation and you get out of the relationship, and now that because they can't physically see you or talk to you, they're trying to blow up your phone. All that. That's what I feel like these jobs are when they transition from being in person to being on Zoom. Like they're just so paranoid about where's everyone at. And especially in our field where like you see the note of where we're at. If you have a work phone, like my company has a work phone, my company really isn't really that micromanaging, so I do appreciate that. But my company has a work phone that tracks us. So now that we can actually even go out in the community and see people finally, we have a GPS tracker that's tracking our mileage. So like, you'll know if I'm lying at some point. Like you can see our phone records. I'm pretty sure corporate Zoom even shows you when you have Zoom meetings and times and stuff like that too, I think. So like, it's not like you're fooling anybody at this point.
Yeah, it's I'm like at a loss for words about that. But yeah, I mean, I've had supervisors who like I had this one supervisor. She was like horrible at micromanaging. It was just like beyond. I was like, you gonna micromanage, at least know how to do it correctly. Or and I've had like other supervisors is just never heard from, and it's just okay. Like, are you just gonna let me rock and do whatever? Like, I don't know exactly what the heck I'm doing, so like I'll reach out to my coworkers for help. So it's just a variety of different things, whatever. And there's so many things to do in the social work field, and transition out of social work, using social work skills to transition into the other parts of the workforce. So give me some examples of that you talk about on your IG lives and stuff.
You say, I'm sorry, you broke up for 1 second on my end. You said that give you examples of
Oh,
what from your life?
stuff of using social work skills and transition them out into other areas of work.
Got you, got you. Yeah. So, I mean, so to start off, if you're someone who's an entrepreneur, or you want to break into entrepreneurship, social work can literally you have so many skills that they unofficially teach you, right? And so one of these skills that we often hear about is outreach, where we're getting new clients or we're getting community resources together. This is literally just marketing and selling, right? So whatever you've learned for outreach to get clients in the door, you can apply a lot of that knowledge, a lot of that skills, and a lot of the confidence you developed into developing your product, getting clients and selling it. So that's one way that you can do it. Definitely positioning yourself as an asset. This could work in many different ways with rapport building. So when you're doing rapport building, you are establishing yourself to that client that you are maybe the best person for the job. You're building a relationship, you're building trust. You're doing the same thing in business, and you're doing the same thing in a lot of different jobs if you were ever to hypothetically leave social work. So those are a few things I go over kind of in my lives and in my classes, just learning how to take these skills that you learned and either take it to another position that you have in social work, or like, I coach people who are in other healthcare industries as well too, but like take it in the industry you're already in, apply it for something better. Or if you want to go into business for yourself, take the skills you already have and just enhance them. So that way you can do it for something totally new and different that you haven't done before.
Yeah, that's great, and like we mentioned earlier, I mean, for me, that's something I never thought about before until yourself and a few other people, on Instagram and Twitter have been talking about and really advocating for. So it opens up new eyes and opens up my eyes and new opportunities just for anybody to like, man, I can't stay in this job. Let me try to figure something out. Or I can't stand my supervisor. Or can't stay in the upper administration. Because sometimes it's just the upper administration. It's not necessarily like your direct supervisor. Your direct supervisor has got their hands tied as much as yourself in the field, and you just gotta like go with the flow.
Oh, oh, my direct supervisor is sweet. She don't care. Like she doesn't. She does not care what I do. She doesn't care where you're at. Like low key, I honestly think for in some cases, I'm like you care a little too little. I feel like, but okay, whatever. Like it gives me some freedom, so I guess I don't care. But I agree. It's your direct supervisor. Also, I will say this can usually be the one who makes or breaks your experience, because the upper administration can really suck with policies they do. But I've learned this for myself, and I know everyone's a little differently. But when you have upper administration doing stuff and your supervisor's cool and they don't care and they're your team vibes, you can put up with the BS that comes from the top down. Like
Mm.
honestly, like you can put up with a lot of it, because you're not actively dealing. This is what I say: you're not actively dealing with stupid in the face every day, at all. So if you're dealing with a cool team and the administration is just kind of you're pretty much fine because your work culture and your immediate day-to-day stuff is pretty much covered for the most part. Whereas if you have your direct managers that are very micro aggressive, very micromanaging, those are going to be the people that really make that experience one that where you're going to ultimately leave.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Like, and I've had, like I've had jobs that like supervisors been great. I've had supervisors like, all right, and supervisors have been terrible. So you know, it all comes with the territory, and you just got to make it work. If you're one that's just like I'm very like very even keels, like I'll just go with the flow and do whatever, and you know,
You do what you got to
got-
do.
do what exactly do I got to do about keep my eyes open, my definitely my ears open, keep my mouth shut, and just like observe and like, all right, I see this going on, see this going on, and won't say anything. Like, all right, then like I've always been the one. Like, okay, here's my 2 week notice, but like, what the heck? What happened? That happened. So
Mhm.
it's just like, oh well. And then I told him straight up, like, like what happened? Like, even when I left a job, I was working in Brooklyn. Then I went work at the Bronx, and I was just straight up like, my last supervisor that I had, he was piece of trash. So like I'm like
Yeah.
coming into this new job, like this is like my expectations, and in terms of like the supervision, and I'm ready to work, but at the same time, I just came from a toxic environment, so I'm not going to be dealing with that again. So if I feel like it's going to be toxic, then I'm going to be out. So
Exactly. I completely agree with that. Just being upfront and honest about your position. And there's ways you can do it in a way that's still marketable to the interview too. But I mean, at the end of the day, um, I almost feel like this. When you're dealing with a manager who's interviewing you or HR, you're not fooling anybody at this point. Like everyone knows the answers that are kind of like the tricks where it like cleans up stuff. I just tell people just be honest, be professional, and at the same time, don't speak down at the company, which I think is a hard task for people to do if they have had a very bad experience. It's kind of hard to say why you're leaving, but well, why is the company itself bad, right? So just kind of learning how to balance that statement out a little bit, I think can really help people get on interviews and just let them know, hey, this is the situation I'm dealing with. I don't want to deal with it again. So if this is what it's like, I'm pretty much cool. Like we're cool here.
Yeah, definitely do not burn a bridge because you just never know in the social work profession, especially with like with LinkedIn and stuff. Like it's a small circle. It is big, but it's still a small circle, and you might run into somebody or a conference or just online, whatever. You just never know. So definitely like do not burn a bridge. Like I've had wonderful experiences somewhere. I've had like terrible experiences and still like professional. Like thank you for opportunity, but give my resignation and give the resignation. Follow the policy and do what the policy tells you. If you gotta like go back at the handbook, what does it? And I've done that. I've like, where's my handbook? I'm going to resign. Like,
Handbook.
what does the policy say? And follow the policy to a T. And you just never know.
You never know. No, I agree.
So what's next for you?
Oh my God. Well, I'm trying to figure out life basically. That's what's next for me. Well, I do right now, if you go to my page, so I've recently had a brand change for those who just don't know who I am. So I am known on Instagram as Multidimensional J because I feel like as professionals, especially as a social worker, we're put into this box of saying you're a social worker, right? And there's so many different skill assets to us professionally and personally that make us a marketable employee and a marketable person to go into business for ourselves. So that's kind of where the name change comes from. But you can find me at Multidimensional J. And what's next over there is if you go on there, if you're interested in doing career coaching with me, I do specifically burnout coaching, but I also help a lot of people who are in situations where like we said earlier with burning the bridges, there are people who have burned bridges. So if you're one of those people that's in a funk right now because you burned a bridge or something happened, I coach people like that because usually people who are in burnout are also doing things. They're not always, but maybe they've done things that either they regret or companies didn't like. And I kind of help you guys recover from that kind of stuff too. I also have right now a free resource on my Instagram. So if you go to the link in the bio and then go to professional development, there's a free webinar right now on leaving your toxic job. So this will be a 30-minute free webinar that you guys can watch on if your job is actually toxic, if it's not toxic, if it's something different, and if it is toxic, what are your next steps, including if you have to leave that job without giving a 2-week notice. Rare instance, but it is in some cases people have to do. So I touch on that too. So if you guys want to check that out, it's over on my Instagram page, and just make sure you just hit the link in the bio and go to the website, put your email in, and it'll download it straight to your device.
Cool, awesome. I know from like our first conversations, just to switch gears completely from social work. I know you're a huge wrestling fan, so I know recently AEW has seen some criticism about being having not enough diversity, at least on their main show, AEW Dynamite. Considering they have so much diversity, and they talked about you know we're gonna be diverse, and they do have a transgender female as like their women's champion for a little bit and stuff like that. But um, and I love talking about what we see in terms of education, in terms of entertainment, having a representation of us, the public, and just us being wrestling fans, seeing AEW having some recent controversy about not having enough diversity on their main show on cable TV, and just have what if you heard about it, what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, so my thoughts on it are a little limited just because I just could never, I'm someone I can't get really into AEW. Like, it's just something that I've noticed the product has gotten a little bit better, but I feel like they're a product that still tries very hard. And I have noticed the lack of diversity on the brand, which is a wrestling industry problem, in my opinion. It's not
Yeah,
necessarily just the AEW
yeah,
thing. To me, that's a pro wrestling problem in general. What I will say is that a lot of AEW stuff where they do introduce diversity, it doesn't really feel organic yet. It feels like we're still trying to force something, which, given that can be a stage of diversity, like, it's not just one day, it's really not that diverse, and the next day it is. But it feels like it's being forced, sort of like the women's revolution was in WWE. It felt like we remember the days where everything was the first. Every single women's match
yeah.
was the first, and they made a big deal about it. And it's like, we're trying to force this down your throat at this point. You're like, okay, chill. Now it feels more organically, because you've seen Sasha Banks and Bianca Belair main event WrestleMania for the first time ever, a one-on-one women's match at WrestleMania, and it's with two Black women.
Right.
And it felt organic, right? It didn't feel like this was a thing that we were forcing upon. When it first kind of happened with Ronda, Becky, and Charlotte, it still kind of felt like that period where it wasn't forced, but it still kind of felt like it. And you kind of knew what they were going to be doing within 6 months. You knew we were going to force it. We were going to force a women's main event. Not because they necessarily deserved it. Good match, but not because they necessarily deserved it, because it's like, well, this is the trendy thing to do, like we talked about earlier.
Right.
When we saw Bianca Belair versus Sasha Banks at WrestleMania, it just felt like such an organic match. It didn't feel forced. It didn't feel like we're trying to do this for diversity. It felt right. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense, and it was just, and just the storytelling and everything. It just made like a whole
It was just
lot of sense.
normalized.
Yeah,
It was just normalized. It wasn't something that was like this massive deal. I think Michael Cole mentioned one thing about it. Other than that, it wasn't hyped up as like the first two Black women.
yeah,
It
exactly.
wasn't like that.
Yeah,
It was two
it was
women
just a
in
championship
the main
match.
event. You know what?
It was just a championship match between
It
two
was just a
women.
championship match. Like, no one was really thinking about it like that. And it felt right. And that's really, I think, how really it should look. Personally, I feel like AEW is still trying to find itself. But people always go after them hiring, ex WWE individuals. I personally don't blame them for doing it, because they're still a smaller company that does need the publicity. So I don't blame them in that aspect. But I will say that they are in a stage of where they are mimicking. They're acting like they're a brand that is so unique to the public right now. They're literally just WWE from the 1990s of the Attitude Era right now, and with their own little 21st century twist on it.
Right.
Their
That's some
women's
WCW
division.
too.
Yeah, in a way, it's WCW too. Their women's division really isn't highlighted. Women's wrestling is a big thing right now going on. I mean, Mickey James just produced Empower, which is I'm not sure if that even went down yet. I have to check it out. But it's a all women's pay-per-view that's coming up, and women's wrestling is a big thing right now, and they're not really capitalizing on it, like they could from a business standpoint and just from a societal standpoint. There's not really any diversity coming in there. When it is, it feels like it's token based, if we're being completely honest. WWE, I still think, has some ways to go, but I feel like they've introduced a way to make diversity feel more organic. I mean, you have Bianca Belair, who's women's champion. Big E is Money in the Bank, the winner this year. You have Bobby Lashley, who's the biggest star in the company right now. Last year, it was Drew McIntyre, which I will honestly say, he did not deserve to be the star all year. He got very stale quickly. He was boring. There was no character development. He was just kind of this face character that kicked people in the face. And after he beat Brock Lesnar, it was not really doing anything for anybody. Bobby Lashley feels like a real organic heel right now. And again, it's not, and we're not just putting him in this place because he is a minority. We're doing it because he deserves to be in that spot, period.
Yeah, yeah, of course, and it goes back to this, just society and even like social work with like a diversity where there's so much diversity, but then you don't see that, in the workforce, and it's just like, okay, so even now I see it now, like there's a whole population of people who are still migrating from South America here in where I live at, and is but you don't have any diverse, at least very few, no diversity who's going to help that population to navigate the school system. So look, and then you don't want to hire more people. So it's just like
Exactly.
it's just overall in the society, even something as mundane as like pro wrestling, but still it reflects the society and on a day to day basis and just in the field of social work in general.
I agree. And you know what? I honestly, God, I feel like you can learn so many lessons through pro wrestling in general, good, bad, and ugly. And I feel like WWE is a company where I don't want to say they're perfect because nobody's really been perfect at this yet, obviously. But like, I feel like when it comes to diversity, I feel like they are a company where you see it heading in the right direction, and that represents the parts of society where it's like, okay, people are starting to get it, right? And then there's other parts, like AEW, where you see people actively trying, but it's like you don't really got it yet. I'm not going to discredit AEW. I think that they're trying, but I don't think that they're necessarily doing it in an organic way. I think WWE is starting to manage that way. And I think that a lot of businesses are starting to realize how to incorporate diversity organically rather than just, well, we need a diverse cast, so here you go. And like,
Yeah,
I
exactly.
always tell people this: look at a company's website. Look at a company's website if you want to see, besides going there in person, obviously, but look at a company's website. If the first picture that you see on a website is a big group of people that are black, white, Asian, Mexican, Hispanic, all over, if that's the first thing you see, they're trying too hard because they want you to see it.
Yeah.
They want you to see, look at me, look at me. They're not doing it in an organic way. And I've worked for a company like this where they had their website tailored just like that. I've sat in on some of their marketing meetings, and low key, that's what they were trying. They were actively trying to portray this. So that's kind of to me, like you're actively thinking about this.
Yeah.
And what happens is you have all these members of like, look at all our staff that we have that's so diverse, but yet why are all the minorities on the bottom level, and why is the entire corporate team white?
Mm,
Not even just like the entire.
yeah.
Like to me, that's a clear statement.
Yeah, absolutely. And even like going through like the job interview process, recently that I was, was doing, and they're asking questions about diversity or like what your last job did regarding diversity. I'm like, we haven't really had this conversation about diversity as a country as a whole in the workplace until maybe like toward the end of 2019, if even or like maybe 2018. So it wasn't really until like George Floyd was murdered that we were having to have this conversation about diversity in the workplace. So like it was kind of hard to ask, being hearing the questions and then trying to come up with an answer for it because the companies weren't doing such a thing.
Exactly. They weren't really doing much of anything. And you know what? And it makes me, and given this is my perspective from a white male, obviously, but like it makes me wonder, like people weren't doing anything, and now I see people actively trying. I can't speak for anybody, but it's like, which one really leaves the worst taste in the mouth? Just incorporate it in an organic, natural way. There's a need for it. It's not like there isn't like, even if you look at it from a business standpoint, besides the fact that it's just the right thing to do, going into social work, there's a need for different races, of individuals for social workers or therapists, because certain clients connect better with individuals who are from their specific race or culture, right?
Right,
If
absolutely.
you even look at the LG, that's what they're doing right now in the LGBT community. They're incorporating more, they're taking more active spaces to actually bring in lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender social workers and therapists, because they recognize that as, hey, these type of youth and these type of individuals work better with people like this because they understand them. So why are we not treating it the same way with race and culture?
Yeah, I agree. But, hopefully things will get better, and only time will tell. So there's just a lot
Only time will tell.
there's just a lot going on with this in the country and in the world per se, and we still got this Delta variant we got to deal with, and plus this other variant that people don't want to be talking about for whatever reason.
Right.
So it's one day at a time. All we could do is the best that we can do.
Exactly. Exactly.
Well, good to see you again. Good to talk
Very,
to you
oh my
again.
God. It was so, honestly, it was so good seeing you. I actually love this conversation. This was so much fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And we touched a lot of stuff, especially with the social work and entrepreneurship, and just so many things we touched on today.
Oh my God, I loved it. Well, Bess, I'd love to work with you again one day for sure. So just you hang tight and then we'll be talking soon, okay?
All right, we'll do. Take care.
All right, you too. Bye.